Good evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 to order. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we have all council members in attendance tonight. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wendat people. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial. If you are able, please stand for our national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We'll go to Director Malandrucolo for a closed meeting report of August 12th and September 3rd.
Thank you, Mayor Bundy. Through you, council met on August 12th, 2024 at 9:09 p.m. and moved into close to discuss the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board as permitted to do so by Section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act 2001. On Monday, September 3rd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m., council moved into close pursuant to Section 239(2)C, F, and J of the Municipal Act 2001 to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, to discuss scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations related to the town, and to discuss information that could be prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, or persons, and to receive legal advice. And that's the extent of my report.
Any declarations of conflicts of interest from members of council this evening? Seeing none, if you find yourself in conflict, please let us know. Needing a mover and a seconder of the adoption of the published agenda, and I'm going to look for an amendment as 19.3.1 was accidentally printed, published twice on our website, not on our sheets in front of us, but on our website. So looking for a mover and a seconder of the amended agenda. Councillor Hammond, Councillor McGuire-Blaze, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting for August 12th. Needing a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Verbeek, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. No public presentations this evening, nothing under unfinished business. Reports from administration. We have 10.1 Capital Works and Asset Management 2024-12. We have Mr. David Macbeth here, our manager, and Kevin Gerard to speak. I'm not sure which one's going first. Welcome.
Thank you. Through the chair, per council's request, I have prepared a tree planting request policy for your approval. This policy would allow residents to have a tree planted in front of their homes upon their request in the town's right-of-way where there is no tree currently present. The basis for this policy is that trees are distributed on a first-come, first-served basis. And upon agreement of this policy, funding for this program will be put into the 2025 budget that will allow for approximately 10 trees to start the program. Each application would be reviewed by administration, and we would meet with the applicants to determine the location of the tree. The applicant would also have the opportunity to put a request for a particular species, but it would be up to administration to determine the final species depending on factors including the soil type, location, expected height of growth, and budget. Thank you.
Seeing none at this point, looking for a mover and a seconder that the Capital Works and Asset Management Report be received and that council adopt infrastructure services policy titled Tree Planting Request Policy. Needing a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Mady, Councillor Verbeek. All in favor? And that is carried. Capital Works and Asset Management 2024-13. This is shoreline protection of public property. And we will go to Mr. Macbeth again.
Thank you, through the chair. For this report, it was requested by council that administration create a report that cataloged and photographed each municipal owned shoreline property. We had the completed on-site surveys this past spring by administrative staff, and we created this report that includes a location map, the type of shoreline protection provided, and the condition of those assets, if any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macbeth, for this report. Any questions from members of the council? Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, just regarding two particular areas on either side of our town lines there, are these leeways, are they co-existent with the neighboring municipalities? As far as shoreline protection, is there an obligation between both municipalities to look after this?
Way on either side for the Amherstburg and Kingsville, I'm assuming you're referring to, is met at the end of the right of way at the shoreline, then yes, we'd each have a half to be responsible for.
And do we have a current working relation with our neighboring municipalities regarding upkeep on these particular shoreline accesses?
Through the chair, we don't have anything currently in place, although we have good working relationship with both municipalities. We would only be doing work out there if requested through service requests or if we had direction from council. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through the chair, there was a few that in the report said poor. Is there anything being done to upgrade the conditions?
Here at this time, we are just presenting the report. We're not putting any recommendations. If you want further studies done, we'd probably have an outside consultant come in to do depending on the location, a structural analysis or a shoreline review. And from there, have to provide a separate report to council about the conditions for assets that are in poor condition. Thank you.
Through the mayor, just wondering, I noticed on a couple of the reports that they weren't able to get to the beach to determine the state of the shoreline. Was there much thought given to maybe taking a boat out and having a look, or is that just out of the question, or is that something we'll be doing in the future so we know what the state of those ones were, just to help finish up the report?
So on this one, we just tried to do it from the shoreline, right? We were just trying to essentially kind of catalog the assets, right? We had those 25 properties and we wanted to just kind of give council an overview of kind of what's there. Once again, if we were to want to go further into that, we try to have an outside consultant and have them, procure any type of boat or do any type of review from the outside of the shoreline. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. There was a few properties there too where we were not sure of the owner. Again, are we taking any action on that, or is this just meant for our information?
Through the chair, it's just provided for information. We did our best to try and track down all ships, as you can And the ownership in the beach properties is sometimes complicated, and that's why it kind of took a long time to get the report completed, is we have to actually find which ones we owned, and it took a little bit of time to do that. So there were 2 properties in the report that we were still unsure, so that's why we reported on them. If we were looking for anything further, we'd have to delve into it even more so to try and determine ownership. Thank you.
Report. It's really interesting to have. And now we have a visual. In the future, at some point, I would like to see and make sure that the properties that we're uncertain about, whether if they're public, they're ours, okay, we know, but if they're private, I want to make sure that we can determine ownership so we're collecting taxes. I also think that complaints on the shoreline also come when the water's high, we seem to get more complaints. So right now, I think the water's lower because I'm not getting as many complaints. But the request for this report came in when the water was quite high. And so a lot of more of the shoreline was getting beat up, especially at the end of Arner. That was a popular one that was shared with Kingsville. And at the time I was told that Kingsville was motivated to fix it. So that's something that I'm interested. And there was council support in the last term because, the councilors were like, we want to be good neighbors and we don't want our property eroding private property. So good report and good to have. And I'm wondering if there's a place we can I don't know, put it on our website somewhere just so that if people ask us about it, but we can deal with that a later day. Okay, at this time, I look for a mover and a seconder that the Capital Works and Asset Management Report be received and that council adopt, or that be received for information, sorry. Councillor Allard and Councillor McGuire-Blaze, any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Capital Works and Asset Management 2024-14, Engineering Services for Maidstone Arthur Gosfield Intersection Improvements. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the Capital Works and Asset Management Report be received and that council approve the additional engineering and project management costs for Public Works 210037, Maidstone Arthur Gosfield Intersection Improvements in the amount of $42,024.39. Looking for a mover and a seconder on this. Councillor McGuire-Blaze, supported by Councillor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried. Operations 2024-06, sidewalk patios. We will go to Mr. Macbeth to speak.
The Chair, per council's comments from our last report that we provided on April 15th, administration had proposed at the time to institute a new sidewalk policy, patio policy, to work in conjunction with our existing bylaw. Based on that, we are now recommending the following on this policy: that it be eliminated. We are not going to come back with a proposal on it, and that as part of that, we remove any requirements for any standardized or patios out there, as well as any work to be completed by operation staffing. We're also not implementing any new fees then as part of that we had required in that policy, and that any requests that for patio policy, patios are done through our bylaw 2160, which was already previously approved by council. Instead, administration is recommending that we make revisions to the existing bylaw that we have in place, which would include the adoption of the guidelines from the Ontario Traffic Council, restaurant patio guidelines within the right-of-way, and that where those guidelines recommend any traffic control measures, those are to be done at the applicant's expense. But we'd be recommending that administration through our operations would be installing it to make sure that it is done properly, and because we also have the equipment to be able to do so. Where any potential boardwalk is need to be created because of the traffic control, that would also be constructed by the town's forces. It'd be paid for by the applicant, but the cost for installation and construction would be borne by operations. We also would be looking to change the clear passage to be 1.8 meters from 1.5 per the recommendations in OTC guidelines. And we also want to give authority to the director of our infrastructure services to be able, or a designate, to close the parking spaces. So if someone does apply for a patio, we don't have to come up to council every time. It will allow the authority for us to close them upon each applicant applying. We also wanted to revise the start date. It is incorrectly listed as March 1st, where it should be May 1st, because that would interfere with our winter control services we have usually still during March. Also, we wanted to reiterate that these OTC guidelines would only be used for the permanent patios, and that semi-permanent patios or pop-up events would not be under the OTC guidelines. They would fall under a road occupancy permit as they currently do, and they would not be and we would also not be doing any OTC guidelines for any closed street events that would be done where the roadway would be closed to traffic. Thank you.
On this report. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
You, Madam Mayor. In the report, I read that there would be no, they wouldn't be allowed any heating or cooling devices. Is that, or is there a way for them to have some approved by council or by administration?
That is a current policy already in our bylaw, so that's one that just, we want to just kind of bring that to your attention. So that's not a change. As for the ability to do so, I guess that motion would probably have to be brought to council for an exemption from the bylaw. Thank you.
Just have one comment. I like it. I think it's much better, much more fitting. One question I have is if the director is closing parking spaces, I'm wondering if council can just get like a letter, like an email saying we're closing parking spaces, because what's going to happen is some residents could, or some other businesses could complain, and then we don't know that approval has been given. So if you keep us on the same page, then I think it could streamline some of the issues that we may see in the future. Councilor McGuire, please.
Thank you through the chair. I just want to say thank you for putting some effort into the report and making the necessary changes to the bylaw. I think it's really great. I think it's fair for our businesses. And I think that this is a really good compromise. So thank you. I do want to go on Mayor Bondi. Maybe we could do have Mark do one of those public announcements that a patio is coming. These parking spaces are going to be closed for the summer, but enjoy the patio at Mama's Place or Bearded Dog or something like that. Just that way, it's not just coming from us and people understand and are aware it's coming from the town. So thank you very much. And that's just a suggestion.
At this time, I will look for a mover and a seconder that the operations report be received and that council adopt the guidelines from the Ontario Traffic Council Restaurant Patio Guidelines within the right-of-way and council direct administration to amend bylaw 2160, being a bylaw to permit sidewalk patios in the town of Essex, to include the criteria listed within this report. Moved by Councillor McGuire Blaze, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any further questions? All in favor? That is carried. 10.5, Finance and Business Services 2024-03. Needing a mover and a seconder that Finance and Business Services report be received and that bylaw 2365 be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on September 3rd. Needing a mover and a seconder for this. And Councillor Verbeek, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any questions? All in favor? And that is carried. Legal and Legislative Services 2024-04, reallocation of funds from Spay and Neuter Voucher Program and Trap Neuter Release Program. And we'll go to our Deputy Clerk, Shelley Brown, for this one.
I just really quickly, I just wanted to go over a couple of things as to why we're bringing forward this report. So this year, the TNR program has been really successful. So successful that we're actually almost out of funds. And this program started many, many years ago. I believe it was in 2015 when this started. And over the years, some great work has been done to control the feral community cat population. We want to continue to make sure that is a continued success. So part of this request is to be able to pull some of the unspent funds in reserve from prior years to be able to keep this program going for this year. The second part of this request relates to the Spay and Neuter Voucher Program. The voucher program is separate and apart from the TNR program, and that includes feral cats and owned dogs and cats for low-income families if they qualify. There's two parts of that program. Historically, there's been 175 vouchers for feral cats and 10 for low-income families. In the report, you'll notice the usage over the years has greatly declined. Those vouchers are worth $75. With recent changes to the Humane Society, not being able to bring animals in there, not taking so many appointments, a lot of these residents are being forced to go to private clinics where the fee can be quite a bit more. Let's just leave it at that. So to incentivize this program, because there is quite a bit of money left still in there, we're proposing that we change the voucher program or voucher value from $75 to $200. That would also mean, though, to stay in budget, that less vouchers would be available. The second part to that is because there is a healthy reserve verified by Director Jurusevich, should we notice as the year goes on that it actually is working, I would come back to you and request more funds from reserve so that we could add more vouchers. I just think with the increasing costs of vet bills and not being able to go to the Humane Society, this will help to incentivize residents to start using this program as well. So that's pretty much all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Member of Council, Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Madam Mayor, I'm kind of curious, like, so since 2019, less than half of these are used. And I'm just wondering, that to me doesn't, I appreciate the report. That to me doesn't say we should spend more of the taxpayer money to encourage people to use it more. It seems like they're using it less and less each year. And I understand recently, but I mean, even back to 2019, less than half of them were used. I just wonder, I don't know that I'm so much in favor of increasing this at this time. And, you know, we've had tax increases the last couple of years. I'm a little concerned myself with the optics of this one, and I don't know that I would support it at this time.
Mayor, so we're not asking for a budget increase. So this amount is already in budgets, is already approved. So we're still working with it within the improved budget. There would be no tax increase. There would be nothing for the taxpayer.
I misunderstood that. Thank you.
To add to that, there's been issues with the Humane Society being able to do things. And the $75 that was previously allocated is not enough for somebody to effectively use the voucher. It costs them way too much to go and use a vet. So what we're trying to do is offset some capacity that the Humane Society can't afford to do right now, and to also make the vouchers worth something.
Thank you through the chair. Are there certain vets that the vouchers are good for? Or is it just like a coupon and any vet can just redeem it at the town hall? How does it work?
What we do every year near the end of the year, we have a list when you get your voucher of participating vets. We'll have our staff call to make sure that they're still wanting to participate in that program, but the list is recommendations. So what we advise the resident to do is that when they're calling, say if I'm going to a local vet here, I would call and say, I have this voucher, will you accept that? And then it's up to that vet at that point in time. So the list that we provide is just who we believe to be participating in the program, but we encourage the residents to verify before.
For Allard.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Brown, again, for your continued work on this file. And I guess Director Malandrucolo did kind of clear up where I was going to go, because there seemed to be a bit of a misunderstanding, and because of some of the challenges that some of these residents have been meeting with the Humane Society's ability to keep up with the service. They have had, the only option was to go out to vets who charge way more than the 75. I think the drop in number, I seriously think and believe that it will go back up. I think it's because of all the challenges this year for people to find the service with like you know, you go and you get a $75 voucher and all the vets are charging $225. It's just not feasible for a lot of families, right? So I'm hoping and this will bring those numbers back up.
Just on what Deputy Mayor Shepley was saying earlier about not having a lot of people use the system. Do we advertise it a lot?
Counselor Allard. So that would be part of this as well. We would work with Mark Tortola to do some advertising to let residents know that the value has increased. And we'll really push that out there so that they're aware of that. But I note what you're saying, and going forward, I think that that's something that we can do better at, is especially before that kind of season where they, you know, there's always a season time of the year where the cats start to reproduce, and we can get ahead of that with some additional advertising and promotions.
Here, just to add to Manager Brown, her comments. We were trying to advertise. We did actively advertise this program, and that's why, and we didn't see the numbers improve, and that's why we think the change in the amount is required.
Last question. So if we don't raise the amount, we leave it as it is, what happens to that money at the end of the year? Does that go back into our reserves of some sort?
Deputy Mayor Shepley. So yeah, so any unspent money goes to reserve. So right now we have a very healthy reserve. Over the years, like one program started in 2013, the other one followed in 2015. We have about 60,000 in reserve right now. It's included in this report. We have a very healthy reserve. So we can afford to start to kind of incentivizing some of these programs for sure.
You're asking to raise the amount, but we're not going to change the amount that we budgeted this year. It's just going to be raise the amount allotted to the individual.
Correct. So there's 2 points. So I'm asking that the budget stay the same, how the number of vouchers decrease, the value increase. I am asking to pull some money out of reserve for the trap, neuter, and return program, though. I am asking for right around $6,000. Well, that is currently in reserve.
Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that. And so some of you on the history and how we got some of the trap, neuter, release programs was Donna Hunter found that we had an animal welfare budget for crow mitigation in our town. And because we used to have a crow problem, so there was always money in the animal welfare budget. And we used to do something to shoo the crows out. And now I guess they're all in Chatham. So if they come back, we'll have to figure that out. I'll go to you one sec. So one of the things that I think I want to point out is that if we fix a female cat now, we're preventing like 10 cats next year. So it's about being proactive. And I want to thank you for being responsive to this too. And Essex has always kind of led the way in animal welfare. And I think sometimes when we got some of these reserves during the COVID lockdowns, the Humane Society wasn't fixing as many as they could. And now they're struggling to find, veterinarian services. And if you're a low income person and you still have to pay $120 to fix your animal, that's still a lot of money. So I think this is really good. And I think that sometimes some of the cats out there are babies from folks that can't fix their cats. So I think this is closing another gap and helping out a lot. I have Director Drusevich, and then I'll seek a motion from council.
Just to elaborate on Ms. Brown's points, the 2023 Reserve Management Plan does separate out animal control, and it has a resolution in there that Council of the Day resolved. Any savings from both programs would automatically be transferred into reserve at year end. So there has been ebbs and flows in the spending of it. Recently, there's been quite a few underspending, so a lot of transfers into reserve. Shelley provided the December balance. So it's actually even accumulated with the rise of interest, and it's at 88,000 now.
I'm looking for a mover and a seconder that the Legal and Legislative Services report be received and that council approve an additional $6,175.84 in the 2020 year for trap, neuter, return program from the Animal Control Reserve, and that the spay and neuter voucher value be increased from $75 to $200 and the number of vouchers be reduced to 64 for feral cats and 5 for owned dogs and cats for low-income families. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Verbeek, Counselor Allard. Any further questions? Counselor Verbeek?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm hoping or wondering if we can put this out on our social media because we in this room know that there were several people that could not fix their cats in the past year. They got the vouchers and found out that 75 was a drop in the bucket. If we can put that out on social media, we can probably get more cats fixed. Thank you.
Like it. All in favor? And opposed? Whoops. All in favor? Let's do that again one more time. Opposed? And that is carried. Office of the CAO, Town Hall Expansion and Consolidation. We will go to our CAO for this one.
Mayor Bondi. So in your council agenda tonight is the report on the town hall expansion and consolidation. To kind of pull out some of the key highlights and points there, we have prepared a presentation. So we'll call that up now. If you want to go to the next slide, Cassandra. So basically what I want to go through is the purpose of this. We're looking for council's approval to move forward on issuing tender documents to expand and renovate the current town hall footprint. We'll provide some background information. Director Morissette will go over the renderings and floor plans, and Director Drusevich will go over the proposed funding model. And at the end, we'll put up the recommendation. Next slide, please. So the next few slides, these have been presented to council in the past, but I just thought it was important for the public and council again to see these. So in 2016, we did have an office accommodation review done on this building and also Guesto Hall. It was done by Stevenson Engineering. And basically it was the scope of the work was to evaluate both facilities, see what is needed in the next 5 to 10 years. Next slide. So the two buildings we'll be talking about is Essex Town Hall. As you can see there, is built in 1967. So currently it's 57-year-old facility, approximately 10,000 square feet. Currently we have 43 full-time staff. As you all know, we have more when we have students or contracts in here, and a house 5 departments. Next slide. Second building is Guesto Office. It's an older facility. So that was 60 years old, built in 1964. Houses 15 full-time staff and currently has 4 divisions. So based on the Stevenson's engineering report, one of the conclusions, next slide, sorry, was that the current buildings do not meet the current program and space needs. And again, this is from 2016. They noted there is a physical disconnect between staff and offices that were created, better office layout and accommodations, which should be addressed. In order to make the operations of the town of Essex run more efficiently, it's necessary to make improvements in on the communications and relationships by consolidating all major departments and divisions into one building. To renovate, based on Stevenson's programming, we would look at an additional 21,000 square feet, which would include office, meeting space, a revised council chamber, storage space, and staff areas. Next slide, please. So since that review, the previous council took steps to allow for future expansion by moving Top Park, which is just north of Town Hall, to the current splash pad location. Also purchased a former daycare, which is on the corner of Arthur and Irwin, that property. In addition, in 2021, during the pandemic, the provincial government had funding to help create more spaces. So we applied for that grant. We were successful. So when they created a new design of our customer care areas and expand the customer entrance, we considered at that time also what expansion could look like. So that's when those renovations occurred, but also with the potential for an expansion. So to create the designs, architecture was tasked to create more efficient areas and provide a design that would be part of the expansion. In 2023, so with this council, part of your strategic plan, one of the main pillars is safe and reliable infrastructure, with the goal to embrace asset management and best practices, build, maintain, and continuously improve our municipally owned infrastructure. Some of the 2 buildings will realize these current challenges. We have operating capital costs in 2 administration facilities with not a lot of energy efficiencies in either one of the buildings. There's lack of synergies in communication between departments. There's issues with front-facing customer service desk coverage. So divisions have maybe only 1 clerk, and when they're on vacation or sick time, it's hard to have that coverage. So in terms of the customer service, we do have issues with that. Some of the building amenities were lacking meeting space, so each facility only has one meeting room that seats a maximum of 5. Small council chambers, which we're in now, which accommodate council, administration, and the public. Lunchroom, currently both facilities only have one lunchroom, and then this maybe sits 3 people, right? It's very, very small for this building alone has 43 staff. We had major renovations throughout this whole building. We've literally used every square inch. Because of that, the HVAC system is not efficient or designed for all the proper airflow. There's no room for future needs. We have converted office space, the former garage, our former storage room, meeting rooms, our vault, the former jail cells. All that has been converted to administrative space. So staff in 2 different locations also creates confusion for the public. So at times they have to go to both buildings. So they'll come to this desk, and then we have to give directions to also go to guest offices. Next slide, please. So next steps. So at the November 6, 2023 council meeting, council did provide direction to administration to proceed with construction drawings and develop a business case to fund the construction of a town hall expansion, which would include the selling of the Guesto office facility. Based on this direction, architects have developed construction-ready drawings and have provided a Class B budget based on the detailed drawings. With a Class B, from my understanding, is the closer you can get to quotes until you actually go out to tender. Okay, so we feel pretty confident in the prices we'll be displaying tonight. To ensure a total cost of the expansion is presented, we have also obtained pricing on additional anticipated costs, such as permits, furniture, IT equipment, and landscaping. So with all this all in, a total budget amount of 6.3 million is proposed for the expansion of Town Hall, and a final financial business plan was developed based on these costs. Important to note that in the 2016 Stevenson report, to build a new town hall at that time was $17 to $20 million. With the inflation from there, we're anticipating a new town hall would be a minimum $23 to $25 million. Based on all that, administration feels the current proposed option for an expansion of town hall by consolidating with the Guesto office facility is practical option for the town of Essex. And this option accommodates today's staff requirements, but with addition of the second floor, it accommodates needs for the next 10 to 20 years. I've always said to council that this is an Essex solution, right? We're looking to use our current footprint, stay in our downtown core, and use property we already own. So I think this is a good proposed solution for the town of Essex. So architecture, as mentioned before, have developed renderings and floor plans on the new town hall expansion, which are designed to accommodate staff from both facilities, as well as building a second floor to allow for future needs over the next 10 to 20 years. And I'll go to Director Morissette now, and he can go over the renderings and the floor plan.
Thank you, and through the mayor to council. So I'll take you through some of these drawings that we received from the architect. This first one is an image from the front corner of Talbot Street, and you can see the existing council chambers at the very front near the flags. So that's just one of several views. Next slide. This is the main entrance view looking from Southland Plaza. Next slide. And this is a little bit zoomed in option of the main entrance area. Next slide. Oh, sorry, go back one. Yeah, there you go. This is looking from Arthur and Talbot corner. So you can see in these drawings the difference in elevation because there is a second story on the addition. And I'll speak to that in a minute. And then next slide. And this is looking from Irwin Avenue on the side of the building. So to review the floor plans and what's going on, so you can see that our existing footprint, if we zoom in, yeah. So the diagram is listed as existing building. So you can see on the right-hand side, which is adjacent to our current parking lot. And then we can see the proposed expansion area, and that connects to the an added parking lot. So the parking lot will have the ability to drive in from Arthur or from Irwin. Next slide. So this is the first floor. So some important things to understand when you're looking at these is number one, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is the addition for safety for council. So we'll actually have a slide about council chambers. So that's just one aspect. If this The plans will also has safety of staff in mind. So when we look at it, Gesto has no secured area. It's just the front doors to the building. If you actually walk into Gesto, a resident could technically walk into any of those areas. So as council is well aware, when you walk into town hall, there's key fob areas, everything's secure to protect the staff. So it's really important to look after the staffing safety, and that's one aspect that Gesto is lacking. As well, town hall currently has heating and cooling and air quality complaints. So if you look at the area at the very bottom, you can see our council chambers. So the areas that are attached directly above and to the left, those square areas, that's all controlled by one HVAC unit. So I can tell you almost every single time I come to a council meeting in this council chambers, I hear from somebody about the temperature. The reason for that is because we've had so many additions onto this facility and it's still being controlled by one HVAC unit that it can't read where the best temperature is in all of these different zones because there's no way to control. There's no dampers on the systems to be able to say, okay, we only need air in this area, but not this area. So it's going to continue running. So for instance, if you have one area that's where the thermostat is, where it's very, very hot, it calls for a lot of cooling. It's having a hard time keeping that cooling during the summertime. It's going to make that area of the building very cold where it's not being able to close those dampers. So you'll see temperatures 18 degrees Celsius when it should be set to 21 degrees Celsius. So we're getting staffing complaints as well as very inefficient in terms of our building system. So we're using a lot of energy to cool an area that doesn't need cooling. So this is also one part of those phasing. So as CAO Sweet mentioned before, we're looking for better staff coverage and the customer service areas. So if you look, you can see the existing council chambers attached you'll see a darker black checkerboard area. So that's going to be the area most accessible by the public, with the exception of the council chambers, which obviously they would as well. So these are the areas where the public is able to walk in, and the front-facing customer service areas. So each department will have their representatives sitting at the front counter, and the public can go and speak with those representatives. And then, depending if they have a meeting, they can use one of the meeting rooms because we would have a couple. So in terms of meeting rooms, we can see the existing council chambers, which is this room. So that room, because there's obviously a new council chambers, this room would become another meeting room. And what we would be doing is we would be gutting this room and putting the floor at the existing level. So if you look at the stairs there, it's going to fill in. So everything is at one level. So that's going to continue at the opposite end of the building where the water billing is as well. So where there's steps going down, that's going to be all raised up for accessibility purposes. So everything's going to be at one level. We have had incidents where staff or members of the public have tripped inside the building because of the stairs. So we're looking to alleviate those issues and be more accessible for our own buildings. Also, as CAO Sweet mentioned, the lunchroom can only fit 3 people, and that's a bit of a stretch. Oftentimes, we're finding that staff are sitting in the meeting room for lunchtime, or if we have a meeting, we would have to kick them out of the lunchroom, and then they're kind of like unhappy or figuring out where else to go. So it is an inconvenience with such a small lunchroom area. So I'll show you in the next slide where that goes. And then as I mentioned, the floors throughout will all become one level. So if you go back up again. So all of the areas, as I mentioned before, for the public are the kind of dark checkerboard area. Anything, so to the right of that area is all of our existing footprint. And to the left, in the top left corner, that's where the addition is. So you can see that there's several rows of offices, there's council chambers, a meeting room, and then kind of a common workspace with front-facing customer service. So I'm gonna get up. Here. So that spot is the main entranceway where we saw in the rendering pictures, where the public would come in. So they would come in and they would see the clerk's counter, so they're front-facing, and then from there they can be told where they have to go. Obviously, we'd have appropriate signage so that there's clear locations for where people would have to go. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, the existing council chambers would become a meeting room. The existing HVAC system, as I explained, so that's going to be one of the phases. So what's going to happen is the addition section would be put onto the building. Once that's complete, any staff that's in that area where the HVAC system would have to be redone will be able to relocate into that area, into the new addition area. So the HVAC system will be able to be completed with unobstructed. And then after that phase, all the floors would become leveled out, and then all the staff would be relocated where they have to go. So there is no impact. Of course, there's an impact to staff, but we don't have to relocate them to other facilities. The last move that would be coming to this facility would be the Gesto office. And then they would go where they would have to once everything else is complete, so that we don't have to keep staggering different staff into different facilities all over the place. So the benefits of this project, there's many, but some of the synergies: better staffing coverage. So one thing that we have at lunch times right now, or if people are off or calling sick, sometimes there's gaps with the service coverage. So by having all of our staff here, we'd be able to stagger better, and we would have better front-facing customer service. As mentioned before, reduction in mileage. So we have a number of staff that come to or from Gesto. So anytime we have those meetings, staff would be incurring mileage costs. Staff time. So we have a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there is travel time anytime that you're leaving the building or coming to the building. So we want to reduce that staff time or downtime by traveling. There's a number of fixed costs, which would be reduced by one facility rather than two. We've got more efficient systems, as I explained before. So the HVAC system is just one of the few systems that's providing inefficiencies for us right now. So there's poor efficiencies for our energy. Also, being such old areas of the building, especially Gesto, we haven't done upgrades to the energy systems or lighting systems. So we don't have LED lighting, for instance, in that facility. So this addition would be stepping up what we would have to make sure that the facilities are more energy efficient. So we would expect to see cost savings there. This second floor addition would also look to service our future needs, if there are any. And residents are, above all else, the benefit to this is that residents are coming to a one-stop shop. I can't tell you the number of times, and I'm sure Deputy Clerk Brown would be able to attest to this, the number of times that residents are coming to Town Hall and we have to say, sorry, you have to go to Gesto to be able to deal with your planning or building permits. So it's very frustrating, and I hear the frustration from the residents when they do come in here. So this is also aligning with our organizational review, enhancement of customer service, and our strat plan, which is completion of reviews of the town-owned facilities to identify current and future needs, as well as delivering friendly customer service in an efficient, effective, and transparent manner while providing an exceptional working environment for our employees. So back to the drawings. This is what the second floor would look like. So in the top corner, you'd see a stairwell attached to the washrooms, both male and female. And then there's a lunchroom, which would be able to accommodate many of the staff that would be in the facility. From there on the bottom, you would see the storage area. So we do have storage at the Maydell Community Center right now, where all of our existing files are. So those files would be relocated, which would also allow the opening of another room at the Maydell Community Center for our programming needs. And then you can see a large open office area, which it's currently open, which would be able to house open houses or strategic meetings. That would be bigger for residents. So instead of having to do offsite meetings, potentially the Shaheen Room, you could have them here. Not to say that no facilities will use those, because there's obvious advantages to having offsite meetings in Colchester if there's specific plans out there, but this gives another option for a little bit more of a formal space. And at the very bottom, you can see another stairwell, which would connect essentially to your main front customer service area, which also has an elevator there as well. Next slide. So this is what the council chambers would look like. So the council chambers has rear exit behind council. So this is what I was talking about with security. So if we had an issue in this council chambers right now, everybody's kind of locked in. You'd have to try and exit this way. You'd be blocked one way. This would allow you to exit from the back and go through one of the doors to exit. So it helps with safety, and there have been some recent cases where there have been issues with local councils. So this is certainly a benefit that administration has taken in mind while we were going through the plans. The seating, you can see the road seating at the top has room for 44, a little bit different from what we have in here, which if we're lucky, we can have 15, but there's also no standing room in here, where there would be a little bit of side standing room in this area. So you can see kind of a U-shaped design for council, which would sit all of council and administration. And then the delegates chairs are right in the middle. So a little bit more of a formal council chambers, which would align more with other municipalities and more practical for what we would expect to have at a council chambers. The timelines, the tender is expected, if approved by council tonight, Architectura has indicated that it would be about 2 to 3 weeks to finalize any of the plans, just review them one final time before they go out to tender. To close that and have a winning bidder would take approximately 6 weeks. To issue a PO, bring that back to council for final approval of the funds would be about 2 to 3 weeks. So we would expect to have this complete with a shovel in the ground in about 3 months. Approximately 1 year of an active project. So reasonable timelines to have this completed would be January 2026. If all goes smoothly, it could be a little bit earlier. So as I mentioned before, this plan does have an impact to staff. There's 67%, so 2/3 of our existing full-time staff are impacted by this plan. There are 3 phases, as I mentioned before. There's the number 1, which is the addition phase. Number 2 is to do the HVAC system, and number 3 is to level out the rest of the building and convert this area to a meeting room. And then upon completion of all of that stuff, we'd be looking at finalizing the sale for the Guesto facility. So that is the presentation of the renderings, and I'll turn it back to Kate for financial impact.
Thank you, through the chair. So the slide that's in front of you details the estimated costs and proposed funding for the construction of the expansion of Town Hall. We can see is a total estimated project cost of in the realm of $6.3 million. This is all encompassing, as we mentioned before, including furniture and fixture, IT equipment, all required outfits to the council chambers, and any other expenses on top of construction. You can see that to the right of that, we have some proposed funding sources. $100,000 would be eligible to be used from the development charge reserve. We would have $416,000 from the asset management reserve. This is in regards to some of the upgrades that would impact the existing town hall facility, such as the HVAC system or the raising of the floors in existing areas. There's miscellaneous revenue in the amount of approximately $350,000. And then long-term debt in the amount of $2.9 million and investment income in the amount of $2.6 million. So the above does include proceeds from the sale of the Guesto Town facility, which are ultimately unknown at this point, but could alter the funding scenario slightly. It should be noted that these above costs are if we were to tender in 2024 or 2025. So if the project was postponed for 1 year, what the architect has told us is that these escalation costs or price increases could be in excess of $600,000. So that is why administration is bringing this forward tonight rather than through the 2025 budget process. Long-term debt within this model is less than the previously presented 2025 forecasted amount of $5 million. So in budget deliberations for the 2024 budget, we went through a proposed forecast for debt, and within that was $5 million in a 2025 budget. Operating impacts were also analyzed, and the intent is that the annual debt payments from this project would be fully funded from investment income and not the tax base, resulting in a net $0 impact to ratepayers. Another consideration would be for the potential annual operating savings. Jake did touch on this briefly, and while difficult to estimate, there would likely be a savings to utility costs, the reduction in staff mileage, and the potential for further tax revenue depending on the future guesto use. So moving on to the next slide, the debt indicator review. So whenever debt is considered in a capital project, as per the town's debt policy, we must examine the impacts to it and how it impacts the town's financial indicator. So in our debt policy, what we've done is we've created our own comfort level of debt, essentially. The ministry uses 25% of own source revenues, net of other long-term debt costs, to determine what debt you're allowed to take in a year. Our policy uses 15%, again, to be conservative. So we're 10% lower than what the ministry actually prescribes. We do this in case, say, a project that wasn't budgeted for came up, or emergency repair or something of that nature that we had to use debt for, we would still have the capacity to do that. And what you're seeing here is that the projected debt is in the darker navy blue. And so even with this amount of debt, we are still fairly close to the existing debt line. It does trend up slightly in 2020-35, that being the construction of the Colchester sanitary expansion. Next slide. So the ministry also prescribes debt indicators, and what they do is they tell us what the debt ratio should be in comparison to other municipalities. And so they prescribe different risk levels, and they prescribe what is considered low risk, moderate risk. And then what we've done is shown you the existing ratio and our projected ratio. So what you can see here is the town is within the low to moderate risk level through all scenarios. You can actually see that we do dip below it, which is good. That's a favorable impact. Next slide. So in closing on the debt impacts, debt is a tool that is used by municipalities to ensure stabilized and smooth rate increases. So rather than waiting and accumulating a need for a whole bunch of capital projects, really debt should be taken intermittently. And that way, both administration and council has the ability to smooth out these impacts. And it does allow for better financial planning for the upcoming projects. So the asset management plan is at a deficit in both core and non-core areas, according to the study. Debt will be a necessity in the 10-year forecast, which will ultimately be presented to council as part of the AMP funding strategy. So there are costs already incurred on this project, which I think are important to highlight. In 2016 to 17, there was the purchase of the vacant land after a structure had burned down on that land. In 2021, we made a capital project to reallocate the top park, which also opened up existing land space adjacent to Town Hall. In 2023 to 24, the construction drawings were approved for Town Hall expansion. 2024, we have a slight cost that was done in conjunction with Irwin because there was synergies to do it as part of the road reconstruction. So the servicing was completed at that time. So to date, there's costs incurred of approximately $670,000 for the Town Hall expansion. Should the project not proceed, there would be no recouping these costs. They'd be considered sunk at that point. And that's all for myself.
So as council can see, this is what's in your report in terms of recommendations: to receive the report and then provide direction to administration to proceed with issuing tender documents for the construction expansion of the current town hall with the post-budget approval in the amount of 6.331.075 as per the financial plan as listed in this report. Next slide. So that is what the recommendation is in your report, but at this time, we'll turn it over to the mayor and council for questions.
Questions, comments from members of council? I have Councillor Hammond.
Well, questions. First, I want to make a comment, and that's the conditions which our dedicated staff is working under. It's time to give them proper working conditions. There's a couple of things I noticed not mentioned in the report. And that one of them is a backup generator. I didn't hear any mention of that in this that in part of the,
Bonnie, so that is taken into consideration. We do currently have a generator, so that generator has been evaluated to determine what load capacity can be brought on. So we would have to shift some of the areas that are currently brought on to make sure that the future council chambers and IT considerations would be on that generator. So it's not going to encompass the entire facility as a whole, but it will be the necessary areas that would be.
and follow up on that, the 668,000 that we've already incurred, is that part of the budget as well?
The chair, it is not. Those costs were already approved and paid for in previous budget years.
One last question. Can we go back to the main floor diagram? That's okay. We can find it at another time if it's too big a problem. Oh, closer.
Another question, Counselor Hammond, and
No, that was just it. That's all right. I can get the question answered at a date and time. Thank you.
okay. Counselor Hammond, do you want to repeat your question? So Counselor McGuire Blaze doesn't recall your question. Okay, all right. It was just the page. Okay. We were looking for a page. If it comes back to you, let us know. I have Deputy Mayor Shepley, then Counselor Guerin.
Madam Mayor, I'm on the debt servicing ratio, and when it hits 2035, it's like it's on the it's shooting straight up, but we don't see 2036 on there. Does this 2037, 2038, does that continue to climb? Are we going to hit beyond that 10% line if in those subsequent years?
Through the chair, no, we're not anticipated to. It is genuinely a one-time spike due to the construction of that facility. However, we would have to be cognizant of any debt taken after that point. I will state that the Colchester, the construction of that has been included in the development charge study reserve as well as the wastewater reserve. So the funding models are already put in place for the construction of that.
And then following up with that one, I'm looking at some of the money, and we were going to look at taking long-term debt. Was there any thought to going to our landfill reserve and borrowing from ourselves and repaying ourselves so as to not give that interest money to another group outside? I mean, I understand the need for the landfill reserve, what the use of it is for, but it seems to me we'd be better off to borrow from it and repay it with at the same, whatever, match whatever our lowest interest rate is. So at least that money goes back in, and it would further, because it's going to be for our asset management, and then it would better us in the long run. I'm just wondering if there's a reason why we wouldn't be doing that.
The chair. So interestingly enough, Infrastructure Ontario's rate is actually lower than the rate that we're earning on funds today. So when we examine that, we could get a loan with Infrastructure Ontario for in and around 4% right now, and we're earning in excess of 5% on our funds. So it actually makes more sense for us to sit on the cash and hold it. We did examine all reserves. We looked through the reserve management policy, specifically at reserves where council has allowed us to acquire new assets. And the landfill reserve is dictated as one of those. So it's definitely a good point. But what is worth mentioning is that the landfill reserve is currently the main funder of our asset management program. So I mentioned earlier that we're in deficits in both of those programs. There are significant changes coming to the landfill with the introduction of organics. We don't know what will happen to the tonnage or the revenues we currently collect from that. So given that, administration is recommending to maintain the balance of that reserve. We also know that the landfill won't remain open forever. So what we're trying to do is maintain that principal balance, eventually live off of the interest and not have any impact to our asset management program.
Thank you. And lastly, there was we have some other properties that I know we've talked about selling. Just wondering if there was a reason why we wouldn't like it using the proceeds from those property sales as well as the Gesto building to offset some of these costs.
Through Mayor Bondi, some of the other properties are on our radar, but they may pay for similar type of amenities. If there was some parkland that maybe is declared surplus or something, we'd probably maybe use it for future parkland, something like that.
Thanks for the mayor. Yeah, so a few things. I'll start with Director Morissette. I might have missed it. You were talking about between you going up and down, you were talking about the HVAC system. When we go forward this and they do the expansion, they will redo the HVAC on this side, or it'll take care of, is that what you said?
Yes, so the areas that were directly outside of council chambers and the office wing, those areas are going to be redone with a new HVAC system, new ductwork.
Okay, and through the mayor, further that, office capacity. So looking at the drawings, showing the additional offices, looks like only on the main floor level. Hearing the plan and thinking about the building department and Gesto and employees taking up the space, like what of these additional offices that are shown on here, how many additional offices would be left vacant for growth? And is there consideration on that second floor with that open space of future offices if needed?
Mayor Bondi, so from what I recall, all of the offices on the ground level floor, would it be occupied? The open space in the upstairs of the second story would be available for future growth if there was a need for that. But it's not anticipated to be used at this time. Everything would be on the first ground level floor.
Sorry, just one correction. Initially, all the offices on the first floor would be accounted for, but if council recalls, our former large meeting room on the drawing didn't have the offices, but now that had offices created there. So right now we have 5 to 6 offices that would be vacant for future need.
That's the only thing I'm concerned about, and making sure we have a plan for more growth and for more office space. And then to Kate, no impact on taxpayer is the plan? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Chair, that is correct.
So, I like it. I mean, when I last term of council, it was one of the first things that was brought up in my first year was either new town hall or town expansion. And, you know, this building is served the community well over the years, but the growth is making it very difficult to do business out of it. Even our residents that come in, you know, complain, like it's been said, they come here and they have to go to a gas store. They come here and it's like a maze to get around. So, and I think most of the issue we always had in the past was it going to fall on the taxpayers? And there's other projects we can get done and we should do. And I think we've done that. 2018 till now, we've had more growth and we've managed to do a lot of capital projects with the money we've had to work with while controlling our long-term debt. So, I mean, timing is everything. We councils in the past have kind of kicked this can down the road. And I think we're dealing with it now. I think our employees deserve a better workplace. I think our residents deserve a better workplace. You know, combined with all the work we're doing, not only outside of Essex Center, but within Essex Center, I think it's going to be beautiful. Yeah, I think I could support this. It's a good report. Thanks.
Councilor McGuire, please.
Thank you through the chair. With the layout that we're looking at, you said this room is going to come up to the main level. Are we taking out the roof? Like when you raise this floor up to 3 feet, it'll be a low room. And then what is the plans? Like what is the plans for this room? Is it going to be office space? Is it going to be meeting room?
Mayor Bondi, so the roof height won't be an issue. It will be a little bit lower of a ceiling, but it's not going to be an issue. In terms of what this room will be, it's going to be a future office setup. Sorry, a future meeting room setup. So it's not anticipated to be offices. It's so if you look at the facility that we have right now, this is our meeting room. But when we're meeting, it's very formal. There's not really a table that you can sit around and chat with. We're very far away from people unless we have a meeting of 4 people or less, in which we can use the small meeting room. So this will actually fit very well for the town to be able to have a larger meeting room for any of our larger meetings.
And then can you point out for us, where are the elevators in the layout here?
So if you look dead in the center, there's a little elevator highlighted in red with an X in the white spot.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then through the chair, the only other issue that I have with the layout is washroom facilities. It doesn't look like we're adding any washroom facilities unless we go to the second floor. Is that purposeful? Is there room for washroom facilities for the staff on the main floor?
Through your Mayor Bondi, so we are actually adding one washroom at the very end. So if you look at the black checkerboard hallway, at the very top on the left is a publicly accessible washroom. Otherwise, it would be on the second floor for staffing use.
To the chair. So I like the plan. I think an addition is better than building brand new, obviously. The price tag's much better. My initial concern before coming in and talking to you was where the funding was going to come from. I did not want to increase taxes for us to have a new town hall. I'm really glad that there's a financial plan in place that we do not have to do that. And I think it's important for everybody to know that if this goes forward, taxes won't be increased because of this project. And our staff have done a really great job in making sure that we are in a financial position where we don't have to increase taxes to get what we deserve, that the town deserves, that our staff deserves. So good job. Thanks.
Add some of my comments. I'm here pretty much full time, and I just think that our staff do deserve it. It has been fairly challenging. Some days, some staff have blankets on, and in the same place, some staff have fans. So I don't think it's a very eco-friendly setup right now. And honestly, this is at least 6 or 7 years in the works. You know, we've been trying different things. You know, for example, renting space at the Civic Center. We did that for a number of years because we were trying to accommodate council meetings for delegations. And then once the COVID lockdowns hit, we pivoted back here in our Zoom room. And now a lot of people join us by Zoom. So that worked out well for a while. Previous CAOs have brought us on tours to look at renting facilities uptown to ultimately close Guesto. But Council of the Day didn't spend the money because that was to the tune of $45,000 a month. So I remember being there, and we've been frugal to get to where we are now. And so this to me it's an addition, but it's also a consolidation. And I do believe having all the directors and their departments under one roof will lead to a better experience for our residents. And this isn't something that has happened overnight. I believe it's going to be an economic driver because we'll be driving more people to our downtown. They'll stop, they'll get groceries, they'll have lunch. We'll have more of our staff having eyes and ears out, taking a walk, buying lunch. So to me, it's a win-win-win. And I think our administration have done a really good job bringing us a solid plan that we can go to the taxpayers and we can say, hey, like this isn't increasing taxes, but it's going to benefit us in so many ways. So I'm happy to support this. And I think the timing is right. And we've worked hard to get here and we've already invested so much. So I don't know if there's any other council members that haven't spoke. If you want to speak, if not, at this, Councillor Mady.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I was just curious, the report said if we waited a year to proceed. It might be in excess of $600,000. If this was to come to us at budget instead of right now, is it, the cost can be that much dramatic, or will we think that in the next few months?
Through the chair, budget deliberations aren't set to occur until December. And what that means is we don't officially pass the budget bylaw until February. And so, in all likelihood, we wouldn't draft any documents until we had approval in February. So it would be a few months after that. So I would say it would be in the year mark before we would be issuing an award. So likely those escalation costs would kick in.
At this point, I'll look for a mover and a seconder that the report of the Office of the CAO be received and that council direct administration to proceed with issuing tender documents for the construction and expansion of the current town hall with a post-budget approval in the amount of $6.3 million as per the financial plan listed in the report. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Hammond, supported by Councillor Guerin. Any further questions? All in favor? Opposed? Do you want that noted, Councillor Meady? And that carries. Thank you, administration. Reports from our youth council member.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you for joining us today anyways. County council update from our deputy mayor.
Nothing to report tonight. I'll have a better report at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Correspondence to be received. Looking for a mover and a seconder. 13.1 correspondence to be received. And if any council members want to pull out any others, just let me know after. Mover and a second, Councillor Verbeek, supported by Councillor Meady. All in favor? That's carried. Any items of correspondence that members of council wish to pull out? Seeing none, correspondence to be. Oh, sorry. I went too fast. 12.1, we need to move that the regular Essex County Council meetings be accepted for June 19th. Deputy Mayor Shepley, Councillor Verbeek, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, correspondence to be received and supported. 13.2.1. And what do you?
So, through you, Mayor Bondi's correspondence to be considered for receipt and support from the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario. Whereas elections rules need to be clear, supporting candidates and voters in their electoral participation and election administrators in running elections. Whereas legislation needs to strike the right balance between providing clear rules and frameworks to ensure the integrity of the electoral process. Whereas the legislation must also reduce administrative and operational burden for municipal staff, ensuring that local election administrators can run elections in a way that responds to the unique circumstances of their local communities. Whereas the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks, and Treasurers of Ontario, AMCTO, reviewed the Act and has provided several recommendations, including modernizing the legislation, harmonizing rules, and streamlining and simplifying administration. And whereas AMCTO put forward recommendations for amendments ahead of the 2026 elections and longer-term recommendations for amendments ahead of 2030 elections. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Essex calls for the province to update the MEA with priority amendments as outlined by AMCTO before summer 2025 and commence work to review and rewrite the MEA with longer-term recommendations ahead of the 2030 elections. And be it further resolved that this resolution will be forwarded to all municipalities in Ontario.
Director Malandrucolo, is there any questions? We do have our deputy clerk still here. If there's any questions, if you had the chance to read the document, there were several items in there, such as potentially removing the 25 signatures, changing the nomination period to a shorter time, increasing the amount that we can spend or that candidates can spend on campaigns, and a whole bunch of other goodies. Any questions? Seeing none, looking for a mover and a seconder to support the resolution. Counselor Hammond, Counselor McGuire Blaze, all in favor? And that is carried. Yeah. Nobody cares yet. Maybe if it was next year. 13.2.2, Youth Council Member. Looking for a mover and a seconder that the appointment of the Youth Council Member be received and that the correspondence from administration requesting council to consider the nomination of a Youth Council Member to the Town of Essex be received or received and supported, that Cole Foster be appointed as the Youth Council Member for the remainder of the term 2022 to 2026 term of council. Moved by Counselor Verbeek, supported by Counselor Allard. Any questions? Just receive and support. Okay, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And administration will let us know when Cole will join us, but that's exciting. 13.2.3, the Coaches Association of Ontario. We'll go to Director Malandruclo.
Mayor Bondi, through you, that the correspondence from the Coaches Association of Ontario asking council to consider proclaiming National Coaches Week in the Town of Essex be received or received and supported, and if supported, that council proclaims September 16 to September 22, 2024 as a National Coaches Week in the Town of Essex by adopting the following resolution. Whereas the Town of Essex recognizes the tremendous positive impact coaches have on athletes and communities, whereas the purpose of National Coaches Week is to provide 300,000 coaches who call Essex and Ontario home with the resources, representation, and recognition they deserve for the time they devote to ensuring Canadians live an active and healthy lifestyle. And whereas we celebrate the many amazing coaches who live and volunteer in our communities for their selfless commitment to their athletes and participants by saying #ThanksCoach.
Director Malandruclo, I need a mover and a seconder that the proclamation be proclaimed from September 16th to September 22nd. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Counselor Allard. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, and that is carried. Therefore, I, Sherry Bondi, Mayor of the Town of Essex, do hereby proclaim the week of September 16th to September 22nd as National Coaches Week in the Town of Essex. Thank you. Okay, 13.2.4, Affordable Housing Task Force. Counselor Hammond.
Your worship, I'd like to make a motion that we move into closed council session, Article 2239, Section 2, Section B of the Municipal Act 2001, the subject matter being considered as personal matters obtaining identifiable individual.
Thank you. Needing a seconder for that motion? Counselor Mady, questions to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor. So at this point, council will go in camera and we will hop back up on a Zoom link after we are done our in-camera session.